Hi, this is Herb Chaudiere, and I want to welcome you to the Crannis Garden Railway, located in Edmonds, Washington. I've been involved in model railroading in various degrees for, gosh, it's been nearly 40 years now, and a good more than half of that was spent in the traditional standard gauge HO. Then I went into, for some period of time, outdoor O-scale, and am now finally found the happiest point in model railroading in outdoor G and half-inch scale. And the Crannis Garden Railway, which depicts a fictional western narrow gauge, mountain narrow gauge short line in the 1930s, sort of Depression era is what I kind of like to call it. And there's nearly 1,000 feet of hand-laid track here. The idea being to build a miniature railroad, not to move a toy train set outdoors. And I think I've accomplished that to a pretty good degree. The railroad main line, which has a ruling grade of about 4%, is about 2.2 scale miles long. The rail is mostly code 172. That scales out to just about around 60, 70-pound rail in G scale, which looks right. Unfortunately, nobody's making that rail anymore, but I realized that many of the old-time O-scalers used 172, so I asked around and I was able to get quite a bit of it. I have some code 190 and also some code 148. Using this smaller rail, of course, requires turning down the flanges, but then that makes the flanges look better. I've gotten a lot of questions about how my track is constructed. The basic base of the track is rough-sawn cedar fence boarding cut with a saber saw, and that's how I cut my curves. The ties are cut from lattice stock, which gives me a consistent 1/4 inch thickness, and they're approximately 3/8 of an inch wide by 3.5 inches long. I glue the ties to the base. The base sections are joined with another piece of cedar fence board. That whole assembly is stained with Olympic weather screen semi-transparent ebony stain. Then I spike the rail down about every 5th tie with HO spikes. The rail is brass, but the side of the rail is painted with a color to represent rusty rail, which gives it an added touch of realism. Occasionally, if ties break loose, the glue joint breaks loose, I put a brass brad in to hold the tie in place. Track construction is simplicity. I don't believe in the necessity of heavy concrete bases. The ballasting is a mixture of crushed gravel and Portland cement, put in place dry and then wetted down to form a hard, substantial sub-base. The actual ballast on the track work is chicken grit, again mixed with in about 2 to 1 with dry Portland cement, and after it's contoured in place, then is atomized down with water to harden up. And again, in this case, the ballast is really strictly cosmetic. It's not anything to do with supporting the track. My real feeling on philosophy on this is to make things look credible. I'm not too worried about having exact scale, but I am concerned about having it give the impression of being a real railroad in miniature. And as you'll see, the locomotives, LGB, Kalamazoo, and so on have been considerably reworked so that they look more like real locomotives, I hope, rather than toy trains. And the railroad is set up so it can be operated, but I think, as most garden railroaders have found out, you spend more time running trains for people to watch trains run than you do really operating. But it's a hands-on operation. All turnouts are manually controlled. Couplers operate in a prototypical fashion. The brakeman has to pull the pin to uncouple cars, make sure the couplers are lined up to couple cars. And when we do operate, we usually have 2-man crews, an engineer and an associated brakeman. And if we operate at night, we use real railroad kerosene lanterns for the brakeman to signal the engineer, which adds another element of fun. One of the things you find when you get into this larger scale out of doors is that you can make it a functional railroad. This railroad has log trains that haul real logs because the logs are used as fuel for my potbelly stove in the garage, which heats the garage in the winter when I'm working on the railroad portion that is in the garage. Also, tank cars can hold libations, and flat cars and gons can carry condiments and other goodies to eat when they're delivered down to the terminus at El Patio. These are the inside yards of the Crannis Garden Railway, and this really gives a handy place to bring the rolling stock in, have it secure out of the weather when the railroad is not operating, which is a real advantage. Some other garden railroaders, of course, have to take all their rolling stock off the railroad, carry it in, put it back in the boxes or on the shelf. The upper yard is one terminus of the railroad and is the highest point on the line. And it's called Crannis. The lower yard is West Overshoe and is kind of a division point. One thing I discovered is that if you build a yard, you've got to have 3 double-ended tracks. Otherwise, if you ever have more than one train in operation and coming into the yard, you're going to have a traffic jam. So in planning your garden railroad, be sure to have any yards have at least 3 double-ended tracks where you can uncouple an engine, run around the train, and of course generally provide some kind of a turning facility, a turntable or a Y. The buildings were copied in the office copy machine at various sizes, and then Gus Swanberg, who also painted the backdrop, colored them in, and it's quite effective. I don't attempt to operate when it's raining, and sometimes we do get snow here, and if it's too deep for my Rio Grande Southern 02 plow to take care of it, then the railroad shuts down. Try to get a train over the line once a week just to make sure things are in good shape. Maintenance is remarkably minimal. Occasionally a spike will rust out, occasionally a tile work loose. Track does have to be cleaned before each operating session because the system of powering is a constant voltage on the track with a command control system that is radio controlled. As some of you old-timers may know, I've been involved with model railroad sound from way back, having been sort of the inspiration for the PFM sound system, and I'm still playing with sound, trying to come up with what I feel is a good sound system for G-scale for outdoor railroads.